Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. As always, I am absolutely thrilled that you are here. If you have never checked out our program before, we are primarily a commentary and an interview podcast. Today, we have an interview for you. On the studio line is Gina Ramsey. Gina, how are you? Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. I'm doing great.
Gina is a humor writer. So, yeah, and it's just what the world needs is a little pick me up. We're going to maybe have some, learn a little bit about some laughs today. So that's awesome. Thank you so much for being here. You're an authorpreneur. I love that term. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? What is that?
Sure. So authorpreneur is I started writing my book and I had to come up with a business name, and I thought, well, Gina Ramsey authorpreneur is great.
Yeah.
But I get involved in a lot of different things. I am involved in a humor writing group that spun out of the Irma Bombeck conference.
Okay.
So I work with other humor writers in that capacity, helping them to get connected with resources and professionals in the writing industry to help them on their journey towards writing their books or whatever they're writing.
Yeah, I know a lot of the humor writers that really love that Irma Bombeck group. And for those that may not know, if you're a certain age, you may not know, Irma Bombeck was, how would you describe her? A very famous humor writer, would you say?
Yes. Really well renowned.
Yes. And she had a very down home sensibility style. Very popular. The book
Yes.
you have is called Burnt Gloveboxes. And your byline is embracing life when it goes up in flames. That's something that I've never been able to do. When life goes up in flames, I have a meltdown. I don't do well. Do you have to learn to do that, or are you born with it?
Well, I don't know. I feel like I was born with that. My dad was always really silly, and always kind of made quirky statements when things went awry. So, and I will be honest with you, there were times where I wanted to scream or cry or both,
Yeah.
in some of the instances that I found myself in, but really in taking a step back and looking at the funny side of those things, really helps me to stay grounded. So
Sure.
I try to encourage others to try to do the same thing. You know, it might not be in that moment, but later on,
Yeah.
take a look and go, "Oh, well, that was kind of crazy that happened." So
Yes, and that's a great way to be. I need to be more like that more often. Now, you're in Wisconsin.
yes,
Okay, is that where you're from originally?
I was born and raised in the Chicagoland area, the western
Oh, okay.
suburbs. And my husband and I moved to Wisconsin in 92. And we always had a goal of moving to Florida, but we kept moving north.
Yeah.
So now we're way north. We're really close to Canada. We live in Superior, which is the sister city to, like, right next door to Duluth.
Okay.
Minnesota. So, but yeah, when we moved to Arkdale, Wisconsin, which is about 40 minutes north of the Wisconsin Dells, for any of your listeners who are familiar, which a lot of people know of the Dells, that's when some of these like crazy things started happening. And it was one thing after another, and it really hasn't stopped.
Yeah.
Through the years.
Okay.
So.
Interesting. All right. Now I'm from Ohio, and some people. Well, it depends on where you're from. Cleveland can get the lake effect, so they can get some bad winters. Now I'm a little farther south than that. Last couple winters haven't been that bad, but you're up in an area where you have like cryogenics for the living, right? It gets really cold up there.
Yes, it does. Especially January, February. So.
Okay. Now, like, so any of your mishaps, do they involve a furnace not working during the winter time?
We have had that happen. I did not write that story yet. But we had that happen when we lived in Stevens Point, which was about half hour north of Arkdale. So,
Okay.
but most of our stories in Point involved our golden retriever, Rusty. He was a
Okay.
beautiful boy, but he was crazy and smart sometimes, and other times we wondered what he was thinking.
Yes. Humor writers often write about their animals. That's a very common thread,
Yes.
especially dogs.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Little dogs. Do you have a little dog?
We now have a dachshund. Rusty
Okay.
was a golden retriever, and he was very large. My mother-in-law
Oh,
referred to him
yeah.
as the horse, and he
They can get
had
big.
oh yeah, he was a big
Yeah.
one and a sweet boy, but he did just some things. He ran a lot. He would wait for the weaker family members
Hmm.
to get near the door, and then he would take advantage and run out when. And that was usually my father-in-law or my daughter, Katie, my youngest daughter, when she was
Yeah.
about 4. So yeah, he was nuts, and he would eat a lot of weird stuff, not
Yeah.
shoes or typical stuff that dogs chew on, but just weird stuff. So I have a lot of those stories in there.
Okay, good, good. Yeah, people love animals, which I do
Mhm.
too. I've known some comedians now. Stand-up comedians are a little bit different than humor writers, but I've known a lot of them, and I did stand-up back in the day, and I met a lot of headliners. I was never a headliner. I got to say, one common thread is that socially, typically speaking, comedians are not the life of the party. They're not the people that are standing on the bar stools. They're pretty laid back. Talk to them backstage, very flat line.
Mhm.
So, as a humor writer, is humor something you save for the writing, or are you funny socially? Are you like the type of person to be a blast to go out and have a drink with?
Oh, well, it depends on who I go with.
Yeah.
I'm like one of those introvert extrovert type of people. So if I
Hmm.
don't really know who the people are, I'm pretty laid back and reserved. But once you get to know me, I mean, I'll do my renditions of Ethel Merman, my Tommy Boy impersonations, Yogi Bear. I'll do all of that stuff. So um yes. My husband would
Okay.
tell you, yes, I'm the crazy one in our group.
Okay. Do you see what Ethel Merman,
Oh, yeah.
the other one, Yogi Bear, and what was the other one?
Yogi Bear and Tommy Boy, fat guy in a little coat.
Okay, okay.
Fat
Do you want
guy
to?
in a
Would you like to
little
do one?
coat.
I'd love to hear it.
All right. I'll do
Okay, go
Ethel
ahead.
Merman. Do I back up from the
Yes, yeah.
mic?
Hey, just a little bit, you'll be fine.
All right. There's no business like show business. There's no business I know.
That's excellent. That is absolutely fantastic. Thank you
Learned
for
it in
doing
8th
that.
grade. I learned it in 8th grade from a girlfriend that I rode the bus with. She would do all these impersonations, and I said, "You have to teach me that."
That's great. Of course, a lot of those impressions, though, a lot of people don't know who they are anymore.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's the old ones. It seems like Humphrey Bogart and all. They had a certain, they had standout features. Like today, you
Yes.
don't have people with standout features. They all kind of sound alike and talk alike, and all that other stuff. About your writing, because we have a lot of people who are interested in writing and the
Yeah.
discipline of writing. I've had a lot of people tell me that they can only write when they're inspired, but sometimes, I had another writer give me a real good quote one time. She said, "Writer's block, that's a little perk that goes to amateurs. When you have deadlines, you can't have you can't have writer's block."
Right.
Other people tell me you got to set certain time aside, and you can't let anything interfere with it. Not kids, not husbands, not parents. These are the times of day or times of week that you write, and you have to stick to it. What's
Yes.
kind of your methodology there?
My life is crazy. I juggle a lot of hats. I'm a full-time social worker, medical social worker by trade. So that's my daytime big girl job, I call it. And then my husband and I also run a business. So I'm doing paperwork for the business quite frequently and different things with that. So um, my I just sit down and start doing it. Usually my creative thinking brain starts late at night, which is not helpful to me anymore because
Right.
I am getting too old for this now
Hmm.
for staying up that late. But that's when the creative juices really flow for me. So, um, but yeah, it's getting the schedule in, and it's not all about, once you publish a book, it's not all about the writing anymore. It's
Yeah.
your marketing, and you're going on podcasts like this today, and going to book signings. So it's juggling a lot more stuff. I'm
Hmm.
loving it absolutely 110%, and if I could do it full time, I would.
Yeah.
um I just have fallen in love with it. But yeah, I guess everybody has to answer your question, everybody has their own time that they write,
Yeah.
and what works for them. And I really couldn't give any like direction per se, because everybody's got to do it at the time that works for
Sure.
them. Hmm.
Sure. Interesting. Now, you mentioned being a social worker. We don't need to go into that too much, but I
Yeah.
do want to say, first of all, thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's. I'm familiar with the work you do. I actually work in the marketing department of a nonprofit. We're mental health and addiction recovery.
Hmm.
So we work a lot hand in hand with folks like you, and a lot of times it's a very thankless job. But boy, it's an absolute necessity. So thank you very much for the work that you do.
Thank you.
That kind of makes sense to me on some of the things that you like to talk about, because you talked about humor and its effect on wellness. Now that starts to come together there. Now
Yeah.
I know where the connection is. Finding the funny in life's mishaps and humor when it comes to health and wellness. You want to tell us a little bit about that? How do you incorporate that philosophy?
Yeah. So I've, in my big girl job, I've taught a lot of different classes, and they're, kind of mindfulness classes, and how to de-stress, and how to help anxiety. And one of those things is laughter. There's a whole bunch of different things that you can do. But I've always personally tapped into laughter. It really like helps. It makes your feel good hormones in your body.
Sure.
Um, you know, give them a jump start, and it can really brighten your day. So it helps to reduce your stress, your heart racing, any kind of tenseness. Laughter really helps, and they call it the vagus nerve, and it helps to just relax the body and calm it. So it's one tool that I use. Everybody uses different tools, again, similar
Sure.
for de-stressing, but laughter is one of my things. I absolutely love just plugging in Seinfeld or, a funny movie and giggling.
Yes, yes. Again, I'm going to say the name of the book. The name is Burnt Glove Boxes. We're talking to Gina Ramsey. When it comes to writing humor these days, when I did stand up, there wasn't the let me put it this way, hypersensitivity
Mhm.
that the audience has now. And not that I went too many dangerous places with material, but I did say things that today I would wince a little bit because everything is a flashpoint.
Yeah.
Has that affected what you do at all?
You know, Not too much, but I do stay aware. I wrote the book before I started reading about how to write humor, and so I've been reading Scott Dicker's book. He's one of the founders of the Onion, and Dave Fox, I believe. But I've been reading books and like finding that, oh, I did that. Oh, yeah, I did that. But one of the big things is punching up and not punching down. And
Mm,
it makes sense, right? So you don't want to like be picking on, the person with mental illness or whatever.
sure.
My book is very I take some pride in it that it's not full of filthy language. I've had parents that have been sitting and taking a picture of reading the short stories to their kids
Hmm.
for bedtime stories. um but I did take a writing class after I while I was writing the book. And it really gave me a frame of how to be compassionate to others and what they might be going through. So
Sure.
there is one story in the book where I was like, this guy was just crazy. Like, I'm a magnet for people who just like to talk and talk and talk. And I get trapped. My daughter and we're usually a pair when this happens. But after starting to take this writing class, I took a step back and I was looking at every story. And that one
Hmm.
was the one I had to really hone in on a little bit more and find that compassion, that flip side to it, and what this person may have been experiencing at that moment,
Yeah.
that he, you know, trapped Katie and I,
Yes.
to say it nicely.
Yes. And I've gotten trapped too.
Yeah.
Years ago, when I was a disc jockey, I was kind of well known in the area. I used to do appearances with bands and stuff like that, and people get an odd fascination with you. I'm not, and I was never like a Brad Pitt or something. I can imagine, I can understand why they need bodyguards,
Yeah.
because people will approach you anywhere. I mean, at a dinner table, at a urinal, they don't care. They'll approach you anywhere. They feel like they know you, and it's just like, wow. So
Yeah.
yes, I know what that feeling is like, but you like, you're right. You don't know what they're going through, and
Right.
that might be a big release for them to get to talk to somebody that they feel that they know. And yeah, so it can be tough. Now you
Yeah.
talk about another one of your things that you like to talk about, which I think is a great topic, because so many people say when it comes to following their dreams, I got to pay the bills. I would have liked to have been an opera singer, but I have to pay the bills. But I kind of believe, and I think you do too, that you can walk and chew gum at the same time. I mean,
Mhm.
you can be responsible, pay your bills in a traditional type of day job, but you can pursue your dreams, and that can be just as important as walking in the park or anything else that you like to do with your spare time. How do you talk about publishing, especially self-publishing, because that's where it's at for a lot of folks these days, and still maintaining the day job and everything else that you have to do?
Yeah, it's just being really organized. And I guess, walking and chewing gum, well, I end up biting the side of my cheek half the time, but
Yeah.
um
Hmm.
um it's just one of these publishing's it's expensive. I didn't go traditional. I went with a hybrid. Um Pretty much my publisher plopped into my lap. I'm part of a women's networking group called Virtual Networkers, and she's in my chapter.
Hmm.
And so I felt personally that I needed that extra support and education. She provides a lot of education on like the publishing process and all of that. She really believed in my goal to write this book and turn it into an anthology. There's a lot of people who self-publish. I can't really speak to that because I've never self-published, but a lot of people do it and do it
Hmm.
successfully. What I would say is make sure you have a good editor and make sure that you have somebody to do your cover design. Cover design is huge. It's what stops the scroll. There's millions of books out there, and you want to make sure that your cover stands out amongst the rest.
Yeah.
Hmm.
That's a common problem in this digital age. I mean, it's truly a double-edged sword, because yes, everybody has access, just like with what I do here with digital media. Everybody's got access to it. It's a great thing. The bad thing is that everybody has access to it, and
Yeah.
there's so much stuff out there. I can't speak for self-publishers. I don't know what percentage it is, but I can tell you that over time, the cream has a tendency to rise to the top. That's why you have to persevere. That's why you have to stay there.
Yes.
Most podcasts are very short lived. Most digital media platforms, individual accounts are very short lived. And I would suspect it's that way with publishers too. You get that hot streak. This is what I want to do, and it starts to become a drag.
Yes.
And you really got, how do you keep that energy? How do you keep that hunger?
I have loved going out and meeting people. My undergraduate was in graphic design. So the big joke in the household now is I'm finally like using my degree. Um,
Mhm.
but you're right. It's one of these things. I've heard people say, um, authors that have said, "Well, I hated doing all that publishing stuff." you know, the writing the book is just the very first part. It's just the little
Yeah.
tip of the iceberg, and you really have to dig your heels in deep and just get out there and get known.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm determined to do this. I feel like my book has a good message. I want to bring laughter and joy to our world. Our world needs it so badly. And if I can make somebody smile, to hear a coworker tell me my mom's been very sick and I bought her your book, and I hear her
Mm,
laughing on her front porch. Like, that brings me so much joy knowing that I've made a change in somebody's life in that
yeah.
positive way. Hmm.
See, I see that side of you coming from your other types of work, making a difference in people's life.
Yep.
And I have a lot of respect for that. A lot of people want to write a book or do something with digital media because they want to be famous. And, that's all part of it. But I can tell you the really good ones are the ones that affect people's lives. And
Yeah.
that comment right there is very telling about your motives and the kind of person you are. And here again, I have a lot of respect for that.
Thank you.
The book, once again, I want to mention here a few times, Burnt Gloveboxes, the author Gina Ramsey. Where can people find the book?
Sure. It's available on Amazon. It's available at indie bookstores. It is print on demand. So, I have a couple of stores that have a few in, but my publisher is really determined to make sure that people aren't ordering wastefully and destroying all these, unnecessary books.
Hmm.
Yeah, just about any Barnes and Noble, you can order it from Barnes and Noble. Just about anywhere you order books, you can get it.
Before I ask you where people can find you online in regard to
Yeah.
social media, that's one thing that in our remaining moments here I would want to mention for any aspiring author or YouTuber or podcaster or whatever, even traditional business. If you have a brick and mortar place, I got to tell you that radio advertising and things like that still work, but it's drastically changed. The
Okay.
idea that you can have some kind of a metric for your return on investment and all that. I hear that. What's my ROI? It doesn't quite work like that anymore. You're probably going to have to get your hands dirty, and that means either doing it yourself, whether it be with social media, what have you, or paying somebody to do it. The days of just handing money off to a radio station and expecting a return, those days are gone.
Mhm.
Um, what is When it comes to social media, is there one platform that you feel works best for you?
I am on Instagram. I'm kind of new to Instagram. I'm getting it
Yeah.
finally. But Facebook, I'm out on quite a bit. And
Hmm.
then also my LinkedIn, I post once in a while on my LinkedIn. Not as
Sure.
much as Instagram and Facebook,
Okay.
but those are
Where
the
can
two
people?
big ones.
You have an author page. Where can people find it?
Yeah. So you just go to www.ginaramseyauthor.com, and there's areas on there where you can just go to Amazon or to indie bookstores and order the book as well. So,
Awesome. Awesome.
yeah.
We need a lot of laughter in our life as a parting shot when it comes to, if you listen to the news. And I got to tell you, as a podcaster, news and politics are double-edged sword for me too. Because I got to tell you, I have a couple of co-hosts. We do political and news stuff every so often. The ratings are always really good. They get a lot of listens, but you get a lot of hate. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
they both come.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of crazy news going on. What advice would you have for me? Because here again, you and I are both work in industries where we see a lot of the stress that on in real life terms that it causes in our society. What message of hope would you have for people to maintain a good attitude and not be afraid to laugh?
Oh gosh. Well, number one, turn off the TV once in a while. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm just as guilty. I'm like, oh, I gotta see what's going on in the
Well,
world,
you
and
got to
then
once in a while, sure.
and you get the song in the beginning, da da da, so it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
already depressing. So, but yeah, I mean, just be in the moment. I watch people on their phones all the time, in
Yeah.
restaurants, and they're like a family sitting together, but they're not even interacting. So, not bossing people around, but just be engaged in the moment in life and look at the funny things that there's so much. Like, go somewhere and people watch. Like,
Yes. Yes.
there's funny everywhere.
Oh,
So,
yeah. There most certainly is funny everywhere. That's an understatement. We've
yeah.
been talking to Gina Ramsey. Her book, Burnt Gloveboxes, the byline, Embracing Life When It Goes Up in Flames. So great talking to you, Gina. Gina, you're going to have to come by again. And if you wanted to participate in one of our conversations about current events or whatever, and you think you can, you want to brave some heat, you're more than welcome.
I shy away from those conversations.
I don't blame you. It's probably good
There's
advice.
no winning. There's no winning.
Yes, no, there is no winner. That's the thing. There's no winner. And if you try to win, that's where you're going to get frustrated because you can't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gina, great talking to you. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, and thanks to all the listeners. Thanks for tuning in.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening. I'm Billy Dees. You can find me on what was once Twitter, but it's now X at Billy Dees. That's kind of like my social media home.
Nice.
And you can find me other platforms too. There's the Billy D's podcast page on Facebook, Billy D's on YouTube, etc. The vast majority of listens come from our audio platforms. We're so grateful for our partners at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and there's a new one called Good Pods, which is kind of like if you're familiar with Goodreads for books.
Yes.
Good Pods does the same thing for independent creators. So you want to check out that one too.
Nice.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you very much for listening to our podcast today. I'm Billy Dees, and we will talk to you again next week.
You are listening to the Billy Dees podcast. Follow Billy Dees on Twitter, now the X platform, at Billy Dees.